Don't go away. Back to the Future Night continues on NBC with the rest of the movie. And afterwards, with a special advanced look at the new futures. Now join me, Leslie Nielsen. I'll take you behind the scenes and show you never-before-seen footage from Back to the Future Part 2. The future's coming, and you've never seen anything like it. Remember, the end of tonight's movie is only the beginning. There's more, much more. You'll see Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, and Leah Thompson in exclusive scenes from the new Back to the Future and behind the scenes of both Back to the Future. Believe me, it's something you don't want to miss.
I'm Leslie Nielsen, and welcome to the second part of our show, where we get an advanced peek at some of the scenes from Back to the Future Part 2.
And a look behind the scenes at both Back to the Futures.
Now, the new second chapter of the Back to the Future saga is a Part 2 in the truest sense of the term. And in the spirit of the old Saturday afternoon serials, Part 2 begins exactly where Part 1 left off.
And action!
Marty!
Back to the Future 2 is actually a continuation of the first movie.
You've got to come back with me.
Where?
Back to the future.
Being able to continue the story and being able to press and redefine the definition of the word sequel like it's never been done before, to me was what I wanted to do.
In Back to the Future Part 2, Marty, Doc, and the DeLorean travel 30 years into the future.
What do you mean we're in the future?
October 21st, 2015.
Marty, we're going to be able to see our wedding.
Wow.
And even though they're both seasoned time travelers, Doc has to warn Marty about the dangers of the future.
Future. Unbelievable. I gotta check this out, Doc.
All in good time, Marty. We're on a tight schedule here.
Tell me about my future. I mean, I know I make it big, but what do I become, like a rich rock star?
Please, Marty, no one should know too much about their own destiny.
Right, right. I am rich, though, right?
Ah, but we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Before we can truly appreciate the future, we should take a closer look at the past and the creation of Back to the Future Part 1.
I hope they don't think it's a movie about clocks.
Rolling. Quiet, please.
Marker?
This film was about time.
If a machine could actually transport us through the ages of time, all of human history would be ours to visit. The first task facing the makers of Back to the Future was deciding exactly where they would send their young time traveler, Marty McFly.
My feeling about making a time travel movie was to, first of all, make a fun adventure. The reason we chose the 1950s was a simple logistics question. Our hero is 17 years old, and he has to go back to the time when his parents were 17 years old, and that just simply put us in the 50s. The second reason was that the 1950s was the birth of American teen culture. That was the first time that the teenager started to rule, and he's ruled ever since.
But Marty found himself being more than simply a passive observer in an innocent time. In this film, he actually changes history by becoming part of the birth of rock and roll.
Marty's at a dance in 1955, my character, and he's with the band, and he decides to kind of invent Johnny Be Good in front of all these kids who don't even know what rock and roll is. We got Brad Jeffries, who's a terrific choreographer, who put together this whole thing. He and I worked out this Chuck Berry thing.
Who knows? Maybe Marty McFly did invent rock and roll.
We figure that it's more fun to fool around with a time period which you're familiar with, which you know. And the 50s were great because we've all had the experience of looking through our parents' high school yearbook. There they are. There's mom, there's dad, but it's not. I mean, they don't look anything the same. They're skinny, they're beautiful. You say, no way.
You're my mom.
It's like, you know, when you're a kid and your father and your mother tell you the things that they did as a kid, you know, like walking 12 miles to school and doing their homework on a shovel, at the, you know, it'd be interesting to go back and
see if it were really true.
Mark, action.
But people aren't the only things that change over time. Places change, too. And in Back to the Future, Hill Valley is itself a character and undergoes some strange transformation.
Well, when you walk onto that back lot, it's so perfect, it's so detailed. I mean, so much work has gone into it. It is 1955. I mean, you're there. Everywhere you look, you see the travel store, 10 Days in Cuba, you see the cars and everything. And it makes it very easy for the actor.
Not so easy would be having the same streets and buildings double for Hill Valley 1985.
One of the major elements of the story, even in its earliest incarnation, was to take a place and show what happens to it over a period of 30 years. What happened to everybody's hometown is obviously the same thing. They built the mall out in the boonies, and it killed all the business downtown, and everything changed. A real location was out because nobody was going to let us shut down their town to make it over into the 50s and then remake it over. So what we did was we used the Universal back lot, and we realized that the smart way to do was to shoot all the 1950s stuff first, make the town look beautiful and pristine and wonderful for the 50s, and then just totally trash it down for the 1980s stuff, which is what we did.
The concept of a town as a character which undergoes change is carried one step further in Back to the Future Part 2. The filmmakers added the twist of an alternate version of the present, created when Marty inadvertently changes history during his time travels.
Information about the future can be very powerful. If it falls into the wrong hands, it can affect the world.
Welcome to Hill Valley!
Hill Valley is Hell Valley. Biff owns everything.
1985. Can't be.
What you're really saying is, you know, your future is in your hands. You can make it this way or you can make it that way. It can be good or it can be bad. You don't have to have a time machine.
Next, we'll flash ahead to take a look at the future of one time traveler.
We're like a couple of teenagers, you know?
Traveling through time doesn't just mean seeing places change, it means seeing people change, too. Now, rather than cast different actors to play the old and the young incarnations of the characters, the filmmakers decided to use prosthetic makeup on their actors to create the illusion of aging.
On the days that we have to be old, we have to go in early, and then they start laying this glue on our face, spirit gum, and putting on the pieces, and it takes hours and hours, and it smells bad. And then they start painting it, but by the time they start painting it, you start seeing this, like, living sculpture evolve. When I had my old makeup on, I drove home because my mom was staying with me and walked in the door and said, "Hi, Mom," and she walked out and she went,
Look out!
When you're traveling through time, you don't age, but everyone else does.
Einstein's clock is exactly 1 minute behind mine and still ticking. As far as he's concerned, the trip was instantaneous. That's why his watch is exactly 1 minute behind mine. He skipped over that minute to instantly arrive at this moment in time. Come here. I'll show you how it works.
In Part 1, as Marty traveled through time, he saw Leah Thompson play Lorraine as a broken-down woman of age 47, as a coquettish teenager of 17, and then as a happier, healthier woman of age 47 in the end. In the future, the story requires Leah Thompson to age an additional 30 years to become 77-year-old Grandma Lorraine in the year 2015.
Granddad.
And after Marty changes history, he finds a rather altered version of Lorraine who's had some adjustments.
Mom? Mom, that can't be you.
Oh, yes, it's me, Marty. Are you all right?
I'm fine. It's just that you're so big.
Similarly, Thomas Wilson played Biff Tannen at age 18 and age 48.
I'm sorry, Mr. McFly. I meant I was just starting on the second coat.
In the future, Biff Tannen is still very much alive, a bitter old man of 78.
What's that supposed to mean?
Hello? Hey. Hello, anybody home? Huh?
But that's just the beginning. Later on, when old Biff travels in time, he actually ends up meeting himself as a teenager. As you'll see in this amazing scene starring Tom Wilson as old Biff and Tom Wilson as young Biff. One actor playing a scene with himself.
Well, that's very nice. Thank you very much. Now, why don't you make like a tree and get out of here? It's leave, you idiot. Make like a tree and leave. You sound like a damn fool when you say it wrong. All right, then, leave.
In the first movie, Michael J. Fox escaped the rigors of prosthetic makeup, but this time, he wasn't so lucky. He not only plays Marty at 17, but also Marty at 47, and his own daughter, Marlene.
Mom, is that you?
To bring these many characters to life, Fox would undergo lengthy makeup sessions.
Prosthetic makeup can be fun and it can be hell. The process itself is pretty time-consuming, and it can get quite hot underneath the makeup. And for old Marty, it was about 4 hours all told.
No comment, no comment!
That's not the most pleasant thing in the world, but I think that's all worth the fun that you have when you're actually in character.
Now, as we've seen, when you have a time machine, some very interesting situations can arise. You can literally be in two places at once, as Marty discovered in part one, when he went back to the mall and witnessed an incident from the beginning of the film from a different point of view. Now, this concept, which is known as the duplication paradox, is expanded upon in the sequel when both Doc and Marty have to return to the year 1955, right back into the same events that they experienced in their first adventure. But let's let Dr. Emmett Brown explain it.
There are now two of me here, and there are two of you here. The other me is the Dr. Emmett Brown from 1955. The other me that helps the other you get back to 1985. Remember the lightning bolt at the clock tower?
Yeah.
That event doesn't happen until tonight, so you must be very careful not to run into your other self.
Two Martys and two Doc Browns intertwined with themselves back into the 1950s. That's really wild. Now, in order to execute this fascinating concept, the filmmakers faced the enormous task of having to recreate the exact sets and the atmosphere they had originally created in the first movie.
This way? This way?
I think the other way. What we realized was that because of this time travel idea, that we could do something that had never been done in a sequel before. We could actually go back into the first movie, but from a different angle. So we re-witness scenes we've seen in the first movie, but seen them from a completely different perspective.
You were in a real Elvis thing in the first movie, which I think is a good thing to do. And when you do those riffs, you kind of like are really leaning back and really like being more physical rather than real. Okay, great.
Sequel situation is you have this great experience, and then like 5 years later they go, let's do it again. And it's similar enough that you're having all that like pleasure again, but it's just different enough that you feel like you're doing something new and something creative and something interesting. Marty has to go back and actually do some stuff behind himself playing Johnny Be Good. I was so jazzed just to be doing that. I mean, it was deja vu. I had been there before. You know, I had done exactly the same thing. I remember the first time doing that rock and roll stuff, I didn't think about it as much as this time, you know, when I kind of doing the thing, and I said, oh, yeah, and this is where I just threw myself on my knees and slid across the stage and did it and went, what the? How did I do that?
Action!
One of the great parts of doing this film is the physical side of it. I love action. I love it when I do something and, you know, I can hear somebody go, well, they're not going to let him do that, are they? And I'm like, hey, they can't stop me from doing it. There's never a scene where I'm not, you know, running, jumping, flying, screaming, reacting. I mean, it's just one thing after another.
Coming up next, we'll hear more from Michael J. Fox. We'll take a closer look at the DeLorean time machine, and we'll have another exciting look at the year 2015. We've met most of the characters in the Back to the Future saga, but there's another very important one that we've left out. It's this one, the DeLorean time machine. But originally, it wasn't going to be an automobile.
The time machine went through a lot of variations, and we changed it quite a few times. Refrigerator, we thought of at one point. You know, it was made out of an old refrigerator. You had to, you know, get in, close yourself. But then we thought maybe kids would start locking themselves in refrigerators.
It would not be a household appliance that would send Marty back to 1955. Back to the Future's time machine would be unlike any before seen on film. There would be the usual high-tech gadgetry associated with such a device, but it would be housed in something that's a part of our everyday life, a car.
It became very apparent that if you, in fact, were to build a time machine, you'd be foolish not to make it mobile and to take it with you so that you could get back and not have to worry because, you know, you never know. You know, traveling through time is a dangerous thing.
In the first Back to the Future, the DeLorean was really just a 1985 automobile with a high-tech twist. But in Back to the Future Part 2, creating a believable vehicle of the year 2015 proved far trickier.
Hey, Doc, you better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
One element that we wanted to deal with in Back to the Future is something that always fascinated Bob and myself, which is the fact that people always tend to predict the future incorrectly. We went to the 1965 World's Fair, and they showed us all this stuff that we were supposed to have in the 80s, and we never got it. And it's even more ridiculous in the 1939 World's Fair when they showed the World of Tomorrow, and they had flying cars. Where's flying cars? I mean, I waited my whole life to fly around in a flying car. We don't have them. Back to the Future, we finally get one.
The filmmakers experimented with several different ways to make the DeLorean fly.
Go!
It was not a simple task.
There was never any one single way of doing it. So the film is actually a combination of every type of technology, whether it was high-tech or low-tech, whether it was physical special effect or an optical special effect. Just about every type of special effect known to man was used.
The 1.21 gigawatts of electricity to travel through time are provided by Mr. Fusion here, the power source of the future. It converts matter into energy. It could be garbage, any kind of matter. It could even be my watch. The future. Where does it come from? How do you create the future? Oh, come on now, really.
The first thing we decided was that, you know, the future wasn't going to be Orwellian. We tried to just project what we thought might happen in 35 years from now as best we could, but mainly making it fun from a pop culture standpoint.
This is cool. We, in a sense, had to get everybody to get past the images that came from Blade Runner, you know, smoke and the chrome and everything. And I just felt that it was important that we be as detailed as they were, but that we convey a different tone.
A team of futurists spent months designing the future of Hill Valley.
We wanted to take what you knew about Hill Valley from the first movie and just go further and push those same ideas further, because that's what becomes fun.
I think a lot of times in film representations of the future, it tends to be kind of evil and foreboding and, you know, kind of negative. But if it was like it's presented here, it'd actually be okay. You know, the future's an okay place.
All right, here we go. March.
And after 2 years in the making,
And action.
Marty came face to face with
The future.
Now, this is a familiar building. This is the Essex Theater, where that Ronald Reagan classic, Cattle Queen of Montana, was playing in 1955. In 1985, the theater was definitely run down. But no, what is it now? It still looks like a theater. Nothing on the marquee. Well, let's find out exactly what it looks like in the year 2015.
Shark still looks fake.
In the first Back to the Future, the past was constantly connected with the present. And in part 2, the future is added to the equation. Or, as the saying goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
All right, punk. Now I'm gonna... Whoa, Biff. What's that?
Whoa, kid, stop.
I'll get it back to you, all right?
In Back to the Future, Marty was in need of a quick getaway.
Wow, look at him go.
Action.
And in the future, Marty finds out that things haven't changed that much.
Hey.
Little girl, listen.
Hey!
I need to borrow your hoverboard.
The hoverboard is a board that hovers on magnetic energy, and it works just like a skateboard, except it doesn't have any wheels, and you don't have to have any pavement to hover on. And they've been around for years. It's just that parents groups have not let the toy manufacturers make them, and we got our hands on some, and we put them in the movie.
And the bad guys come out and they have like these, you know, super modified, like, you know, death boards, and they, you know, set out after him. And he doesn't really realize that, you know, the laws that apply to hoverboarding.
Hoverboards. Pretty amazing technology. With one of these, I bet you could really go places. Let's try it. Maybe it only works in the future. Well, that's where I'm going. Back to the future. See you in the movie.